Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankara Acharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Guru Ratmete Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Om Shri Medha Dakshinamurti Swamine Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastuma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Namaste everyone once again.
Pranams Guruji, namaste.
Yeah. Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om. Brahmatmano shoditayoho ekabhavavagahini nirvikalpa chachinmatra vritti prajneti katyate sustita sa bhavedyasya jivan muktassa uchyate. So after completing the teaching in verse 82, now from verse 83 onwards, Shankaracharya is talking about the result of self-knowledge. What is the benefit of doing all this self-knowledge, gaining this self-knowledge? Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. This is the knowledge that we have gained. And often it is presented as Tattvamasi knowledge or Aham Brahmasmi knowledge. And a person who has gained this knowledge is called a jnani. So what is the benefit a jnani will get is being described so that those who read the benefits will know the value of self-knowledge and they may have the incentive, the desire to pursue it. Because it is said, Prayojanam anuddishya mandopi na pravartate. Without having a benefit in view, without a purpose, nobody, even a dim-witted person, will pursue anything. And especially the self-knowledge, which involves significant intellectual exercise. So a person will naturally ask, what is the benefit that I get? And the benefit we have seen is mukti, otherwise called moksha. And as I said in the last class, according to Vedanta, especially Advaita Vedanta, we say that the jnana phalam, muktihi, is achievable even while we are alive. And that the liberation attained while being alive is called jivan muktihi. And the person who enjoys this freedom is called jivan mukta. And of course, later after the fall of the body, what happens to a jnani is also discussed. Because in the case of an ajnani, the consequence of fall of the body is what? Punarjanma or rebirth. He has to continuously take rebirth to exhaust all the karmas that he has accumulated, all the punya papas that he has accumulated. So now people will ask, what happens to a jnani after the death of the body? What happens to a jnani, a jivan mukta is freedom from punarjanma or merger into Ishvara or Brahman. Merger within inverted comma you can put, which is called videha muktihi. That is also will be described. Therefore, the jnana phalam is described in two ways. One is first stage jivan mukti and the second stage videha mukti. Both are described here in this sloka. And instead of discussing jivan mukti in an abstract form, generally what the scriptures do is they talk about the glory of jivan mukta. The glory of a jivan mukta is the glory of jivan mukti and vice versa. And that is why, in Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna describes a jnani in three places. Chapter 2, verse number 55 to 72. Here a jnani is named as Sthita Prajna or Sthira Prajna. And then in those 8 verses, he gives the Sthira Prajna Lakshanani. Then in chapter 12, again another 8 verses, verse 13 to 20, he describes a jnani as an Advaita jnani. And this Advaita jnani himself is the greatest bhakta also. And he talks about jnani bhakti, jnani bhakta hai. Otherwise called para bhakta. So in the name of para bhakta, calling him a para bhakta, Krishna describes a jivan mukta. There are slokas, adveshta, sarva bhutanam, etc. We will see all that. Gita students, we will see it when we come to the 12th chapter. Then in chapter 14, Krishna devotes 6 verses. The same jnani is described as gunatita, the one who has transcended all the gunas, 3 gunas basically, by claiming, I am nirgunam brahma, I am gunatitam brahma. And by this knowledge, the jnani himself becomes gunatita. Thus, the same Advaita jnani is glorified as gunatita jivan mukta. Therefore, sthira prajna lakshanani, parabhakta lakshanani, and gunatita lakshanani, all are jivan mukta lakshanani or jivan mukti only. Lakshanam we know, we have seen characteristics or traits. And here also, Shankaracharya describes jivan mukti by talking about the glory of jivan mukta in verses 83 to 90. Again, another 8 verses. 83 to 98 verses. And we are now discussing the first verse, 83. And we have seen that during Shravanam itself, self-knowledge has to take place. And it takes place in the form of a thought which arises in the intellect. Acharya says, Vritti Prajna iti katyate. This is the stage when the teacher is revealing my real nature. And my intellect is also totally available for receiving that teaching. So when the teacher so conveys, I have to receive this knowledge. At the time of Shravanam itself, I should claim, Aham Brahmasmi. Vidyaranya Swami says in Panchadashi, Sarvatra iva mahavakya vicharat aparoksha dihi. Aparoksha jnanam. Aham Brahmasmi has to take place in the intellect in the form of a thought while we are doing Mahavakya Vichara or inquiry with the help of a guru. So, Shravanena Ajnana Nivrittihi Jnana Praptihi. And that is why Shankaracharya says, Vritti Prajna iti Katyate. Vrittihi, the Aham Brahmasmi thought. Prajna iti Katyate. It is called Prajna or Jnanam. And what type of vritti or thought it is? He says, Nirvikalpa Chinmatracha. Nirvikalpa. A thought in which there are two words, Aham and Brahma. Even though two words are there, they do not refer to two separate things. They refer to one indivisible, all-pervading consciousness. And therefore it is called Nirvikalpa Vritti Jnanam. A Vritti Jnanam, a thought in which subject-object duality is not there. Aham and Brahma duality is not there. Where Vikalpa means division. Nirvikalpa means divisionless. So this knowledge is a divisionless knowledge. Otherwise it is called Akhandakara Vritti. And another word is Nirvikalpa Vritti Jnanam. And in this Vritti, Aham Brahmasmi Vritti, while claiming I am Brahman, the I refers to what? I also refers to Brahman only. I is not referring to the Anatma. Because through Lakshana, we have already removed the Maya component of Ishvara. We have also removed the Sharira Trayam or Panchakosha component of Jiva. Thus, we have arrived at one common consciousness. Therefore, the vritti he is referring to is the self-evident, self-luminous consciousness. So he says, Chinmatra. Chinmatra means Chid Vishaya, Chidakara, which is referring to the indivisible consciousness without objectification. I am not looking at consciousness. I am referring to the consciousness because of which alone I am conscious of this vritti also. And therefore, that nirvikalpa cha chinmatra vrittihi is aham brahmasmi vrittihi. This is called vritti jnanam. And this claiming that I am Brahman without objectification is called self-knowledge. And he explains how it happens. He says, Brahmatmanoho shodhitayoho. After inquiring into the meaning of Brahman and Atman, referred to by the words Tat and Tvam, all this we have already discussed. This is all just, you should recall all those discussions. Now, I'm not going to repeat all the discussions again. Shodhitayoho, by analyzing what? Ishvara and Jiva, and arriving at their Swarupam. That is called Shodhita, filtering, refining. The awareness which is filtered off its upadhi, the nirupadhika chaitanyam, the undressed Ishvara and Jiva. So, Brahma Atmanoho Shodhitayoho Eka Bhava Avagahini. And this Vritti Jnanam is seeing their non-difference. Eka Bhava means oneness or non-difference between the all-pervading Brahma Chaitanyam and Atma Chaitanyam. which is obtaining in the body, mind, sense complex. The word avagahini means grasping. So in short, a vritti, a thought which grasps the non-divisible, indivisible consciousness, which is in and out, one consciousness. And this aham brahmasmi vritti jnanam is called prajna. So that is all very well. We have gone through all these things in so many slokas. But we must remember, this knowledge alone will not give Jivan Mukti. You should not stop with Shravanam. You have to find time for Mananam and later for Nididhyasanam, which is very important. We thus require quality time and an unpreoccupied mind. You have to find that. If you are serious about this pursuit, if you are serious about becoming a Jivan Muktaha, you have to find the time. You may have the inclination, but time is something that we run behind these days. Even if you are a grihastha, totally submerged in all responsibilities, finding time for mananam and nididhyasanam is your task. Giving excuses will not work. Because all this why we are doing, with a purpose in mind, we are all mumukshus. What we are doing, the whole you have come to Vedanta for that. What is moksha? How I can get moksha and be freed from all these responsibilities. That is what we have come to find out. It's a secret knowledge. It's a knowledge which no university will teach you, no college will teach you, nowhere, no books are there, general books which will give you this knowledge. This knowledge is there only in our scriptures. So if you are not able to devote time, find out time to do mananam and nididhyasanam, you are not going to get the benefit. Because of that, the Guru doesn't lose anything. He will continue to teach. Because as they say, the Guru also, it's like, taking they say, that you can take the horse to the pond, but you cannot make it drink the water like that. Drinking has to be done by the horse itself. And why especially Nididhyasanam is important for realizing that status or reaching the status of Jivan Mukta hai, because this knowledge, Aham Brahmasmi knowledge, still suffers from twofold obstacles. And it has to be freed from those twofold obstacles. First obstacle is doubt. That's an intellectual obstacle. Second obstacle is viparita bhavana, the habitual thinking. So samshaya and viparyaya, which is otherwise called viparita bhavana, are the two main obstacles which have to be overcome. And because of these two obstacles, we do not derive the benefit of jnana. So he says, sustita sa bhavet yasya. The one who has made the jnanam free from these two obstacles by practicing mananam and nididhyasanam, whoever has completed the process of jnana yoga and is naturally abiding in this vritti, he is a Jivan Mukta. Once he has reached that state, it doesn't require Nididhyasanam thereafter. Because this knowledge is there in the background, always with him. Every moment of his life, the Jnani is aware of this knowledge. It is like that in Carnatic music or Indian music, the tambura is there, no Shruti. Whenever the musician sings, there will be one humming. The tambura sound will be there in the background, and his own Shruti is set to that. So like that, this Aham Brahmasmi will be there in the background always. The Shruti teaching will always be there. Pashyan, Srinman, Sparshan, Jigran, etc. In and through all worldly transactions. I will avoid anatma obsessions and always be aware of my real nature. I will be self-aware. It is like, if you have seen these cyclists, some of them, expert cyclists, whatever gymnastics they do, they don't lose the sight of the center of gravity. They will never fall. Similarly, this Jnani never loses the sight of his center of gravity, which is Aham Brahmasmi. Whatever he does, and whoever has got such an unobstructed knowledge, Jivan Muktaha Saha Uchyate. He or she is called Jivan Muktaha. So, Shankaracharya defines Jivan Mukta as a Jnani who has attained clear and doubtless knowledge and is also free from habitual thinking pattern, the Viparita Bhavana. He is a Jnana Nishta, or the one who has Jnana Nishta. Jnana Nishtaha is the name of the person. Jnana Nishta is the status of that person. So a Jnana Nishtaha is Jivan Muktaha. So this is the introductory sloka for the Jnana Phalam. Hereafter, other descriptions are going to be given. But before that, I would like to give some background information on this, some more background information. The word muktihi means freedom or dropping. The verbal root in Sanskrit is much dhatu. Much means to give up or to drop. Generally, we translate it as freedom. So question comes, freedom from what? We say freedom from bondage, otherwise called samsara. All this we have elaborately discussed in answer to the 7 questions. Verses 39 to 42, where Shankaracharya dealt with both bondage and its cause. There we saw that primarily bondage or samsara is intellectual. The intellectual samsara is the original and it is the fundamental bondage. And that intellectual bondage is self-ignorance leading to misconception, self-misconception. Thereby concluding intellectually that I am the body, mind, sense complex, and therefore I am a finite mortal individual. This is the intellectual conclusion, the self-misconception, which happens in the intellect, and this is the primary bondage. And then Shankaracharya described that this bondage, this sense of limitation, apurnatvam, leads to kama, krodha, avidya, karma, etc. Thus, desire, attachment, hatred, and all emotional problems are consequential of this primary intellectual problem. So the emotional problems are not original samsara. This emotional samsara is a product of the intellectual samsara. Therefore, we have samsara experience at both intellectual and also at emotional levels. So one way we can see the intellectual samsara is the karanam, emotional samsara is the karyam. Intellectual samsara is the cause, emotional samsara is the effect. And moksha we have seen means freedom. So here whenever we talk of freedom, we talk about freedom from fundamentally from the intellectual samsara and consequentially from emotional samsara. But generally people don't understand what is intellectual freedom. Therefore, in scriptures, they do not talk much about freedom from intellectual samsara. We only say he is sthira prajna, he is jnana nishtha, etc. All one-word descriptions. The full import of that they don't describe, and they can't describe also. And even if they try to describe, an ajnani listener won't understand because he does not even know that he is actually in bondage. He does not know what is the nature of the bondage. Just because we have got freedom, from external occupation or, from foreign rule, we think that is freedom. Actually, that is not even freedom at the anatma level. People don't realize. They will celebrate all Independence Day and things like that and all. So what the scriptures do is, because even if they talk about intellectual samsara, people will not understand. They talk about freedom from emotional samsara because that can be described. Because we can easily relate to that. A student or a listener will understand that I will be free from worry, free from fear, free from hatred, etc. That is something that we can relate to. These things a person understands. In fact, if you look at it, most people, of course, there are people who come to Vedanta out of curiosity to find out what it is. But informed people come to Vedanta only for the sake of freedom from emotional samsara. And when we say the problem is intellectual and therefore you have to study the Shastra, many people are disappointed. They say, I want freedom from worry, fear, etc. Why are you asking me to gain sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, adhikaritvam, etc.? And also, on top of that, study the Shastra. What is the connection between my worry and studying Tattva Bodha, Vivekachudamani, Bhagavad Gita, etc.? Many people do not know the value of scriptural study because they don't know that emotional problems are because of intellectual problem, because of self-ignorance. Therefore, we have to understand the mukti as freedom from both intellectual samsara and emotional samsara. The intellectual samsara is the conclusion that I am an individual, limited and mortal. Shankaracharya says in Atma Bodha, Parichinna iva ajnanat, that I am small in knowledge, I am small in ability, I am small in everything. Time and space wise also I am limited. And therefore, there is consequential fear of mortality. That sense of smallness, limitedness is intellectual samsara. And that is why an Ajnani says, I am an insignificant individual in this vast world. I am smaller than a speck. Look at the galaxies, planetary systems. In that, one of the planet is Earth. Among so many continents is Asia. And that India, and in one city, in one corner, I am sitting. Just a dot in the world. That feeling is intellectual samsara. Vedanta says, a jnani reverses the whole thing. He claims that the world is a dot in me. That is the reversal that takes place. That is the transformation that takes place in his intellect. So once you have reached this stage, this freedom from intellectual samsara, freedom from fear of mortality, etc., we have to extend that. Then the consequence is freedom from emotional samsara. And that is described here. And what is the basis for that description? That also we have to understand Vedantically, so that understanding will be clear. The mechanism will be clear. So now, how do the scriptures describe emotional samsara? Especially in Bhagavad Gita, repeatedly Lord Krishna says that every individual is full of raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes. Everything, every being, every situation, every event, we immediately label as liked or disliked. And we actually classify the entire world into two compartments, Raga Vishaya and Dvesha Vishaya. By doing so, we are indirectly giving the world the power to emotionally affect us. The moment I have Raga Dvesha, my objects of Raga Dvesha become my master. Because they can emotionally influence me. An object of raga gives me joy by arrival and gives me sorrow by departure. And vice versa, an object of dvesha gives me sorrow by arrival and gives me happiness by departure. Thus, they are capable of giving happiness or sorrow because of their condition. And since the world is continuously changing, coming and going, there is a constant fluctuation in that. And so I also emotionally go through those fluctuations. One family member falls sick, I am disturbed. Something happens in some corner of the world, there is some fire or some earthquake, and some relation is there, I am disturbed. Therefore, any event happens anywhere because somebody is there, I am disturbed. I may have raga for a place. So, any event happening anywhere, falling within my raga, dvesha, rage, affects me emotionally. And thus, I have empowered the world to emotionally disturb me. I have become an emotional slave of things, beings, situations, and events. And this emotional slavery leads to consequent varieties of emotions, anger, frustration, hatred, fear, etc. All emotions are products of two fundamentals, raga and dvesha, including instinctive emotions like natural like for happiness and natural dislike for unhappiness. I have got an instinctive raga dvesha list. And not only that, I have brought forward raga dvesha from previous janma. And in this janma, I have acquired more raga dvesha. I see so many advertisements and commercials. I develop raga dvesha for different types of even things like mobile phones. different types. So I am full of raga dvesha, causing emotional slavery. I do not know when I will be happy. I do not know when I will be unhappy. This moment I am feeling very happy. I don't know what will happen in the next moment to make me unhappy. So this emotional slavery is samsara and is caused by raga dvesha. And if you want to have freedom from emotional slavery, the only solution is you should attack raga dvesha. You cannot control the world, but you can certainly control your raga dvesha. That's why Bhagavan repeatedly says in the Gita, may you quantitatively reduce your raga dvesha, likes and dislikes. But of course, in spite of all this, instinctive raga dveshas will be there. He says, Indriyasyarthe ragadveshau vyavastitau. Very natural ragadveshas will be there. Some minimum ragadvesha will be there. And Bhagavan wants even that minimum can disturb. And therefore he says, Tayorna vasham agachet. May you not be enslaved by those even instinctive ragadveshas. You qualitatively change them from binding raga dvesha to non-binding raga dvesha by sheer viveka, wisdom. How to do that? Convert raga dvesha into preferences. When you get up in the morning to say that I prefer to have a cup of coffee is okay. But to say that in the morning I desperately need a cup of coffee and without that I cannot do anything, even start my day, that is binding raga dvesha. And without that, if I sit for meditation, I will meditate only on coffee. That is slavery. Therefore, convert raga dvesha into preferences. That alone is called the value of vairagya. So to get freedom from emotional slavery, scriptures prescribe vairagyam as an important value even for a common man, more especially for a spiritual seeker. And that is why vairagyam is one of the very important components of sadhana chatushtaya sampatti that is required for emotional moksha. Then naturally a person will ask, if I remove my raga dvesha, no doubt I will be free from emotional slavery. But then I will not have any happiness in my life at all. Because whatever happiness that I have now is coming from the world. That is the raga part of the world, the like part of the world. My children, my grandchildren, my house, everything that I have and I love. And those loved ones give me joy. When I get a message that my children or grandchildren are going to visit me, it gives me so much happiness. So if I develop vairagyam, will I not lose the only source of happiness that is in the world? Because happiness is everybody wants instinctively. That is the goal of every living being. Without happiness, there will be vacuum. Life will be boring. Therefore, even though vairagyam seems to be wonderful and all, there is a flip side to it, that I have happiness at all. And for that, the scriptures have a very well thought out, well developed, well structured answer. Scriptures assert that apart from the self-ignorance, there is another fundamental ignorance you are all suffering from. which is with regard to the status of the world also. And this misconception is that the world is the source of happiness. Vedanta says the world does not have even a drop of happiness. All this we have analyzed, when discussing Anandamaya Kosha. Just recall all those discussions. So no object in the world can give happiness. But the world of objects and people appear to give happiness. That is because of the following reason. This also we have discussed, but we will have a brief recap. Now, all these are relevant to understand what is Jivan Mukti is all about. So, what happens? What is the process? My mind gets agitated when I want to possess a liked object, but I am not able to obtain it. Correct? There is an anxiety. But when I am able to possess it, the object enters my mind and it creates an ideal condition in the form of a resolved or a calm mind. The agitation disappears. Resolved mind means a calm mind, which we defined as Anandamaya Kosha. And depending on our likes, etc., we also saw that this Anandamaya Kosha has got Priya, Moda, Pramoda conditions, different gradations. Therefore, the Raga Dvesha or the objects can only provide an ideal internal condition. In that condition, happiness is not generated. Because mind cannot generate happiness. Anandamaya Kosha cannot generate happiness. But it can reflect happiness. All that we have seen. And that reflected happiness comes from the original happiness, which is Atma. So Atmananda gets reflected in the Anandamaya Kosha. And therefore, what we get is Pratibimba Ananda, experiential joy, which we mistake as Ananda given by the world. Now Vedanta says, if you want Pratibimba Ananda, you require Anandamaya Kosha like state. Now, if you ask how to generate that state, don't we require a world for that? Then Vedanta reveals a secret. It says, yes, that condition can be created by the world through Raga Dvesha. That is one possibility. But it can also be ordered by us by training the mind. We can develop that faculty by which we can have a sattvic, shanta mind, wherein happiness is possible without the need for the world. So Vedanta says the first method of having that reflected joy is Vairagyam itself, when it is developed with understanding that the world doesn't give happiness. It only gives seeming happiness. So I developed an informed Vairagyam born of maturity. That Vivekajanya Vairagyam is such a wonderful faculty that it itself gives happiness. All these are all very elaborately dealt with in Taittiriya Upanishad. The Upanishad talks about joy born out of sense pleasures in various lokas. In earthly sense pleasures, in earth the earthly sense pleasures, in higher lokas, Manushya Gandharva, Deva Gandharva, Ananda, etc. It talks about where everything is superior. Therefore, the sensory enjoyments are also superior. It's like developed countries, everything is so wonderful. Thus, the Upanishad describes higher and higher units of happiness. It says 100 times of that happiness we can get from informed vairagyam. The description starts with saying that 100 units of human happiness on the earth is equal to 1 unit of happiness of Manushya Gandharva. The mantra goes like this. Sa eko manushe ananda hai, te ye shatam manusha ananda hai. Sa eko manushya gandharvanam ananda hai, shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. Thus, 100 units of happiness of Manushya Gandharva is equal to 1 unit of happiness of Deva Gandharva. Te ye shatam Manushya Gandharvanam ananda hai, sa eko Deva Gandharvanam ananda hai, shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. Like this, after describing several stages, goes into a lot of description. I don't want to, repeat all that. Finally, the Upanishad says, Te ye shatam prajapaterananda hai, sa eko brahmana ananda hai, shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. Like that, one Brahma Ananda, the Brahmananda, is equal to 100 to the power of n. And Shrotriyasya Chaka Mahatasya, the one who is desireless, he who is attachmentless, that person you think is a miserable one? When we look at a sannyasi without any possession, without any gadgets for entertainment, we think that he is the most miserable one in the world. And if you talk to him, he will say, I am the happiest person. Therefore, Vairagyam can give greater and greater experiential joy. And then Vedanta goes on to say, with this Vairagyam, when you finally gain self-knowledge, that very knowledge gives joy. Because the knowledge is what? I am not a dot in the world. I am the infinite Brahman. Mayeva sakalam jatam. From me the world arises. Everything belongs to me because the world is in me. I don't lack anything. I don't miss anything. There is no wanting mind. There is purnatvam, completeness. And therefore, jnanam also gives ananda. Thus, jnanam and vairagyam give an inner joy. And I not only enjoy happiness, but I also clearly understand the only source of happiness is me, myself. In fact, I do not look for happiness outside. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Swayam Jyoti Brahmana says, Yesho vasya paramaha, loka yesho vasya parama ananda, etasvaivanandasyanyani bhutani matram upajibanti. This is what a jnani says. My all-pervading ananda alone is now. And then now and then getting reflected in the miserable things that the individuals are running after. When they jump with joy of party, drinks, drugs, when they are enjoying, it is I who am giving that happiness. Therefore, a jnani gets twofold advantage. He is not an emotional slave of the world, since he has reduced his raga dvesha. Through vairagyam, he has made his instinctive raga dvesha also as non-binding. And that freedom from emotional slavery gives him a calm mind, undisturbed by the upheavals of the world. Bhagavan Krishna describes such a jnani in the 14th chapter. Sama dukkha sukha swastha hai, sama loshtasva kanchana hai, tulya priya priyo dhira hai, tulya nindatma samstuti mana pamanayos tulya hai, tulyo mitrari pakshayo. Is tulya, samatvam in everything. The world is a pair of opposites, and it is also in a state of flux. But a jnani is not an emotional slave of that because of vairagya. And he does not depend on the worldly ananda, because the worldly ananda is replaced by another type of ananda, which is samatvam. Again, the 5th chapter, we saw, the Gita students saw, बाह्यस्पर्शेष्व सक्तात्मा विद्यत्यात्मनि यत्सुखं स ब्रह्म योग युक्तात्मा सुखम अक्षयमश्नुते. That person with jnanam and vairagyam, who is not dependent on bahya sparsha, sensory ananda, that person has got another ananda, sukham akshayam ashnute. He has got a factory, indigenous factory of happiness that is not subject to the external conditions of the world. Otherwise, the world will impose sanctions now and then, and I won't give happiness, and I won't get happiness. And people will say, you are not giving me happiness, therefore I will quit and leave you. And if I am a jnani, I will say, very good, wish you all the best. If you are here with me, wonderful. Not here, that is also wonderful. I wish all the best for you in future. So a jnani is not emotionally affected by the ups and downs because he has got vairagyam. And not only he has got samatvam, he has also got infinite internal joy available for tapping whenever he wants. आत्मन्येव च संतुष्टः तस्य कार्यम न विद्यते. Gita, 3rd chapter. So samatvam is the emotional condition of a jnani. Inner joy is available for tapping. This emotional freedom and emotional joy that a jnani enjoys. And this is the background we have to understand how a Jivan Mukta enjoys total happiness. And it is this kind of happiness which is described in manifold ways in the scriptures as Jivan Mukti. Because then alone people will understand peace and joy, samatvam and ananda, how they are connected. This understanding is freedom from intellectual and emotional samsara. This is Jivan Mukti. With this background, we will enter the next verse. So what we have seen, our notion that the world is a source of happiness, and if I disconnect myself from the world by developing vairagya, and it will lead to, if not unhappiness, absence of happiness in my life, is a misconceived notion. Because the happiness that the world can give is only a temporary happiness. It is a Mishrita Ananda. World does not give unpolluted happiness. That happiness is always polluted with unhappiness also. And when we are talking about Raga, Dvesha, we have Raga for happiness, all right, and Dvesha for unhappiness. So if we depend upon the world for our happiness, then we are actually falling into the trap of Raga, Dvesha. A Jnani understands this is the Jnanam that Vedanta is trying to convey. Because many times people ask, when you say Satchidananda Atma, we can understand Sat existence. We can understand Chit consciousness. What is this Ananda element of Satchidananda? There are two explanations. The Ananda is also Ananta, means limitlessness. So Vedanta, from one angle, it says, you are of the nature of existence, pure consciousness, and limitlessness. That feeling of limitlessness, that feeling that I am limitless gives that Ananda, that happiness. And what we have seen just now is a complete analysis of how to reach that stage to claim our status as a Jivan Mukta. And in that process, as we progress, the Samatvam, equanimity, that is generated, that is developed. And that leads to Ananda. And that is why in the Gita, Bhagavan focuses many places on the Samatva. That is the stage that we have to reach for Jivan Mukti. Lot of work is there, of course. But as I said, if you have the inclination, you will have to find the time to work on this. It is not a 3-year project or anything. Continuously, one needs to work on this. Okay. So I will just read the 84th sloka and then we will continue in the next class. Yasya stita bhavet prajna yasyanando nirantara prapancho vismrita prayah sajiva mukta ishyate. This is sloka 84. 428 in the original list. Okay. We'll stop here and continue in the next class. I'll give you Anvaya, meaning and all the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Harihi Om. Dhanyavada. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Guruji.
Hari Om Guruji. Thank you.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram, Guruji. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.
Hari Om.
Namaskaram, Hari Om.
Namaskaram.
Guruji, how nice the world will be if they are all desireless.
No, but to enjoy desirelessness, you need the world. The desire should be there. Otherwise, you won't know the contrast. So that is it. Because if you want to know or enjoy shade, of a tree, you need a hot sun.
Correct.
no hot sun, then the shade of a tree will not be enjoyable, isn't it?
In other words, create the desire and then control it.
Exactly. No, desire is, cannot, see, desire is very natural for any living being.
Yes, absolutely.
Even animals, everything has got a desire. Desire to eat also is a desire, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Without a doubt.
cannot be done away with. What
Mm.
can be done is desire can be managed in such a way that the desire itself does not become a cause for sorrow.
Sorrow.
Because that is what we see. A desire is
Mm.
also a cause for happiness. An unachieved or unattained desire is a cause for sorrow.
Sorrow, correct.
It should not be a binding desire.
Binding. So that is why what you do, you try to convert your desires into non-binding desires. Because there are certain desires you can use vairagyam and you can be away from that, avoid them. But instinctive desires, it's not possible. When you feel hungry, right, you will have a desire to eat food. That is
inevitable. That is inevitable. It is
inevitable.
binding.
Inevitable. Yes. But suppose you are in a place where there is no food.
No, that is one. Whereas, in order to quench the hunger, if you want a 7 or 8 course meal, then that is greed.
No, I'm talking about, that is one extreme, right? I'm talking about even a little bit of food. You are in a place where it is not there.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you
entirely
miserable about it? It is a situation which you cannot do anything about. So then, even that instinctive desire which is there, you must be able to manage it through vairagya. Okay, I am feeling very hungry. I need to eat. Since there is nothing available, I will drink 2 glasses of water and sleep. Many people actually practice it rather. We are not aware, but I have seen people, especially women, have got this instinctive vairagya.
Strong will.
Very strong will in these matters. Because they, I'm talking about traditional women. These days, I don't know, in their company. But traditional women, they will go hungry at night, but make sure that everybody in the family is fed.
Absolutely.
So these are all the ways. Practically we can pick up examples where we can see this really being practiced. So that is how, when you talk about continuous ananda, or you can say permanent ananda, these are all the secrets one needs to explore and assimilate in order to enjoy that.
Correct.
That is what.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Guruji. Namaskaram.
Namaskar.
Thank you, Guruji. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Yes. No hands are going up, so I guess there are no doubts. Of course, today's class was little heavy, but then it was most of them was sort of what I should say, repetition of what we have all discussed in the past. So nothing new.
Yes, Guruji, it was like a revision, and yet at the same time a little more complicated and more to absorb. Yeah.
Because we need to understand, because Vedanta talks about Jivan Mukti, Jivan Mukti, Jivan. What is the Jivan Mukti we are talking about? It's glorified. We can say, oh, he is a Jnani, he is a Jivan Mukta. Jnani means what? Is it only that he has got Jnanam? Aham Brahmasmi Jnanam. Will that Aham Brahmasmi Jnanam give me, permanent happiness? That's the question. That is why, this kind of a background before we go further, 84 and all that.
How does it reflect in the day-to-day?
How is
that's what
the day-to-day? What is it that we need to do? It is a challenging task. We need to understand. Then don't complain. Oh, Guruji said this. You do Shravanam, Mananam, Nitidhyasanam. You will get this. You will get a permanent happiness. Okay, fine. Shravanam, Mananam, Nitidhyasanam you do. But what is your takeaway from that? These are all the practical tips for that. That's a takeaway. Okay.
Yes, Guruji. Yeah, thank you very much. Hari Om.
Okay, Hari Om. Thank you very much. See you next week.